All right, so I get this question a lot, and I want to make sure that y'all have a very good understanding of it. Folks consistently ask, why does Georgia not play home night games? And the short answer is television. But the long answer is that's going to change soon because CBS will not have the number one game of the week from here on out. All of the games will be controlled by Disney. That means Georgia definitely could have more night games in the very near future. Make sure you're picking up DAWGSTRUCTION today. You get a T-shirt from our friends at Red Zone. When you do, the link is right down below. We appreciate everything that they've done for us. Pick up DAWGSTRUCTION today. I don't look at the media guide a ton um, from Georgia. A lot of the stuff that I keep my own records for on certain things. But night game is a tricky thing. Now, Georgia plays a lot of night games. They just don't play a lot of night games in Athens. I mean, for instance, this year, it looks like they might not play a night game at home. That will be dependent on Georgia Tech because the CBS is almost certainly going to pick Tennessee at 3:30. But like last year, Georgia played one night game at home. That was against South Carolina. They played four total night games. Uh, and one was Miami, one was Indianapolis, and then of course the beginning of the season on ABC against Clemson. Um, in 2020, they played one home night game against Auburn. They played on the road against Alabama. They also played Mississippi State at home at night. Excuse me, I said one, and then they backed that up with back-to-back trips to Columbia, one to South Carolina and one to Missouri. All told, the last time, another reason why Georgia fans want to play at night, I think, the last time Georgia lost a night game at home was 2009 against Kentucky. And then the following week, they went to Atlanta and took Georgia Tech's manhood from them in a night game on ABC. So we have become very accustomed to playing at least where the game kicks off during a daytime. Now, what is night at Georgia? Um, Georgia defines that as anything from 5:30 on. So a 4:30 game is not a night game. So any game that's the 4:30 game on SEC Network, that's not categorized as a night game. What's real important in all of this, however, is that like Georgia Tennessee is like almost certainly going to be on CBS. That game is going to kick at 3:30. It's going to be dark by the end of that game. Does that make it a night game? For Georgia's purposes, no, because it's a 3:30 kickoff. Um, when you go back and look, like for instance, the Oklahoma State game in 2007, that game was very much kicked off during the daytime. That is considered a night game. Um, Georgia's game with uh, South Carolina in 2009, that game was during the day, and they certainly closed it at night. So, like for instance, in 2009, when they played Kentucky and Auburn back to back, those were legit night games. Those did not start during the daytime and become at night. But there's obviously a cultural thing here. A lot of people want to go have fun, play downtown in Athens, get their drink on, whatever you want to do before the game. Night games can be very electric in Athens. I think the most memorable night game that I can recall, the Notre Dame game in 19, was certainly a big deal. Um, I think the Alabama game in 2008 was also a big deal. Georgia just didn't win the game. So um, there's a lot of great night games through the years. I do want to make sure I mentioned our friends at DoorDash have got an awesome limited time deal. Make sure you take advantage of this. Our listeners can get 50% off of up to off up to a $20 value and zero delivery fees when you download the DoorDash app and enter the code DAWG, DAWG. That's 50% off for $20 value. No delivery fee when you download the DoorDash app in the App Store and enter the code DAWG, DAWG. Don't forget that's DAWG, DAWG, 50% off, up to 50% off, a $20 value, zero delivery fee with DoorDash, subject to change, terms apply. They've got a lot of restaurants that you can pick from. I've mentioned Cheesecake Factory a few times, but also Popeyes, Chipotle, etc. So there's 300,000 partners, and a lot of these folks, a lot of the things that you can get through DoorDash are local. They do not have to be chains. So keep that in mind. You don't want to cook tonight? Easy, good value. Pop in the DoorDash app and take it from there. Traditionally, Georgia's home games traditionally started at 1 o'clock in Athens. That was a 1 p.m. start. In Jacksonville, the traditional start was 1 p.m. Over time, over time, we've seen that Georgia doesn't have a traditional time anymore. Before the SEC network existed, when Georgia would play a pay-per-view game, it would be at 1 o'clock. A lot of schools, South Carolina, LSU, they will play night games. That is what they want. That's in their DNA. My brother-in-law, when he was little, his grandfather would drive him to Clemson for the 1 o'clock game, and they would drive back to Columbia and watch Carolina play at night. And you could pull that off. The way it's been told to me for years was that Georgia wanted to make sure that fans from South Georgia could get to the game and get home. Um, Maybe it's because the person that told me that was from South Georgia, but I mean, if you're from Atlanta and you're going to the game at 1 o'clock, from where I grew up, it took about an hour to get to Athens. It wasn't far. Um, Obviously, you would not leave at noon for a 1 o'clock game, but I do know some people that still do that. Like they will position themselves to arrive right when the game kicks. It's not a horrible strategy if you don't care about tailgating and you have zero concerns about traffic. But we've entered a new era. I mean, Georgia's athletic budget is $180 million. There's reasons why, and you can find them all in these, in the media guide. When you look at, where did the $180 million? It went to pay Kirby, and it's all the facilities that are in here. A zillion facilities, and everybody's lifting weights a particular way. Player development. So what? Why? How do they have that money? It's from television. What does television get? They get to dictate when you play. There is no traditional time anymore. It doesn't exist. I think I don't think, I know when you talk to vendors in Athens, ideally for them, the perfect time for a game is 3:30, whether you're in retail or restaurant. Restaurants with the 3:30 kick, they can get the lunch and the dinner crowd. You can do early dinner at, or excuse me, early lunch at De Palma's, at, the place. Paloma obviously is an all-day place. And then at night, which is where you'd probably wind up at Paloma more at night, um, there's just so many places that you can go to after the game. It's not that late at 8 o'clock to go sit down and eat, particularly, as I say, Paloma, where they've got television screens everywhere, and they have a huge space. So for retailers, the ideal time, I'm well aware, is 3:30, because then, although night games, you don't hate it. Um, Night game makes for an extremely long day in the retail business. You're opening up at 10 and you're going hard until 6. And when I say hard, I mean, I've seen the stores. You watch downtown Athens, it is very busy on a game day. I mean, chaotic. And there's only 6 a year or 7. So that's why it is, chaotic. But you know, I like night games a lot, but there's an explanation. It's not an excuse. There's an explanation as to why they just don't occur. With that said, you're going to see a lot more night games in the near future, and the television is dictating that. Florida is always, you know, what's so special about Florida, Georgia, and the cocktail party are the long shadows. We're creeping into fall. This image of Kirby, that's not night, that's twilight. And the most beautiful part about playing that game in Jacksonville on the river is that the as the sun is setting, the game is being decided. You want to be in the lead when the horses come on the field. And what I mean by that is Jacksonville's police department has these huge horses, and they're not there during the game. They only come on about 5 minutes, or excuse me, about 10 minutes to go in the fourth quarter when the Dogs and Gators are wrapping up their game. Y'all can't always see them because they're in corridors, but when the horses come out, that's when you want to be in the lead. Um, that game used to be a 1 o'clock kick. Now its tradition is 3:30, and you have the whole tradition of the students from Georgia going to the beaches and then driving down in buses and riding back. So that's not a night game. When you look at the rest of Georgia's schedule, they totally could play a night game against Mississippi State. Could be noon as well. And I think they probably will play Kentucky at night. That's my guess. We're going to have to see how that goes. But when you wonder why, the answer is television. It's that simple. I know everybody thinks that Georgia has a magic wand. They don't. And we will see over time that more and more of these games will be later in the day. Now, some of them are going to be noon games. And for our friends in the Central Time Zone, those will be 11 o'clock games. It's not just don't complain. It's what it is. It's what the money's for. But there will be more night games because right now, any CBS game right now will be a primetime game in the future. Okay, so Georgia, Florida, probably that was probably a bad example, but Georgia, Tennessee, Georgia, LSU, Georgia, Alabama, Georgia, Auburn, Georgia, Texas, Georgia, Oklahoma. Those are all going to be primetime games in Sanford or at Darrell K. Royal. So you're going to get your primetime games. Don't worry about that. Maybe not this season though.